the question was, if you were able to follow along to set up GitHub, a GitHub account, and install Git on your computer, you probably installed GitHub desktop, and you're able to create a GitHub account. So you follow along with the class yesterday. Just let me know in the chat. If you also, before now, you had a GitHub account and you know how to use Git, so you already understood what we did yesterday, that's also fine. You can also let me know in the chat. That's the question. But I know that we are also carrying along with what we are going to be doing today. All right. Looks like nobody did. So let's just go ahead. Okay. So Adeola, thank you. Did you install sorry. Did you also install Git, or did you have Git already on your computer? Okay, setting Git was confusing. I would just recommend that you just go along with the recommended settings that is there. You don't have to modify any of those settings there. The recommended one that is already selected is fine. So just go ahead and just click through them. Basically, it's totally fine. The only part I think you have to do is yeah, I don't think we did much configuration yesterday. I'm trying to remember now. But the basic configuration there was okay. I see. I see. So when you install it, or when you want to install it, just go along with the recommended settings. Don't change anything. Don't modify anything. Just go along with it. So just go ahead with whatever settings you see there. So I hope that would help. All right, so let me get started and let me share my screen. Okay. So yesterday, these were the two repositories we created, Code Vixens and Lilian. Let's continue along with Code Vixens. So if you created the GitHub account yesterday, this is a private repository. So it means it's only if you have access to it that you can see it. So let's get started with really understanding what private and public repositories are. I will share a link to this repository here so that so try to access this repository. Okay, the link I sent. Try to access that repository I sent and let me know how it went for you. So I am waiting for us while I make this public. So you can use your phone or your laptop to click on the link. It doesn't matter which device you are using. All right, fall for error. Okay, so try to access this one. Try to access the last one I just sent now. Okay, thank you. Thank you for error. Thank you. All right, so try to access the last one I just sent and let me know. Okay, so good thing. So basically, apart from the fact that you had a 404 error on the first one, on the second one, you can also see I had a little preview of my of me basically. If you have a picture set for this repository, that would show up here. If it's a pull request or it's an issue, it will generate an image for it and show it. So basically, it's public, it's accessible. That is what it means. But the first one that I sent that is private, you cannot access that because it is private. Apart from being private, even if it's private, you don't have access to, you're not part of that repository. So if it is private, I can grant you access to that repository and you can access it whether it is private or not. It's only private to those who are not within the repository. So if you created a GitHub account yesterday or you have one, drop your GitHub usernames here and I will add you to the first repository and then you click on the link again and let me know if you can access it. So I am waiting for us. All right, thank you. Okay, so let me explain this part I'm about to do. So if you have a private repository and you want to, when I mean it's private, it just means you only want you and the people that you would grant access to be able to access that repository. So I don't want this work to be public. If I go on Facebook organization on GitHub here, I can only see repositories that are public. But for example, the source code used to build the Facebook mobile application or the website, you cannot see that. It is private and it's only those within the Facebook organization who have access to that repository that can see it. So that's why you might want to make your repository private. So if I want to grant people access to that repository, let me make this bigger in case it's not big enough. Yeah, so first I am on this repository that is private and I would go to settings here. I'll give that a moment.
Excuse me, please. I have a question.
All right.
Okay, my question is if a repository you made it public, for example, can you go back, like if you want to switch it back to private, can you do that? Like you
Yes.
want it to be private, can you go back and change the settings back to private?
Yes. Yes, you can. So
Okay. So where do you do that? You go to settings or what?
yes, we are in settings. I would come to that also. Thank you.
Okay.
So the two repositories we had were both private. This one and the second one I sent to you. For the second one, I had to go to settings here and then scroll up to where you see danger zone because this is danger zone and everything you do here is important, is critical. Here you see change repository visibility. Now this repository is currently private and I can click here to change visibility and change it to public. And this would ask me if I want to make it public and I've already understand this effect. When I click this last button, it would become public. So we said that GitHub might ask to authenticate that you are the owner of the account trying to make this public, for example. So you might get to a part where you have to enter your password to continue. But once that is done, then you change the visibility. Also, if it is public and you want to make it private, the exact same way, go to settings, go to danger zone, and then go to visibility and change it to public. And that would do that. So for adding people here, go to settings, you're in general, click on the sidebar here, click on collaborators, and then we see that this is currently private and nobody has access to it. It's just me. So there are no other person who have access to this repository. Now I want to add people. So I'll click on add people. And you can either search for them by their full names, if I know their full names, like my name should come up. Okay, I'm the one. I'm the one of this account. What was the account we created yesterday? We didn't set a name. I don't think we set a name. So let me find the random person, my friend. So this is his name. I just had to search for his name, his full name that he normally uses on GitHub. And when you click on it, you'll be able to invite him as. When I click on this, that will add him to the repository. So copying the first person who sent me their username, I just have your username. So GitHub will search for you, and then I can add you to this repository. So you should get an email from GitHub to the email address you use to open this GitHub account, telling you that I added you as a collaborator here. And when you click on it, you'll be able to access this repository. You have access to this repository. Now, once you've accepted the invite, when you go back and click that link I sent to you, the first one I sent to you, you'll be able to access the repository now. So let me see if the rest of us sent. All right. So I'll repeat the same process. So for those of us that added, check your email address and check your email, sorry, and then accept the invite to the repository. Mm-hmm. Why is it taking time? Okay, so somebody has accepted their invite. That's doing. Thank you. So I can see from here if you've accepted that or not, and the rest of us are still pending invite. But doing when you click on that repository link I sent earlier on, you will now see that you'll be able to access the repository without getting that 404 error. So having access to the repository now means that you can work with me on this repository. So you can come here and you now have access to the repository. You can clone it to your computer. When you're done working on this repository, you can push changes back to this repository. And from here, I can manage what permissions you have to this repository exactly. So, okay, two reports are affected. Beautiful. Beautiful. All right, 4 now. Okay, that's good. Mm, okay, we all have direct access to this repository. This is not an organization account. I thought I could change your permissions. If you are working in an organization account, if you manage a GitHub organization, that's already too far. You can fine grain what kind of permissions you have. So, for example, you may only have read assets. You can only see the repository. You cannot push to the repository, or you may be able to read and write, or you're an admin actually in that repository. But in this case, it's a personal account. I have a personal repository. So you all have read and write access to the repository. But I don't think you can delete the repository. When you open the repository, go to settings here and scroll up to all right, welcome back. So the end that person sends apart from Nyan, did I add you before? So when you access the repository, scroll up and let me know if you can see these settings here. Because this should only be accessible to me because I'm the owner of the repository. So I'm only adding you as a collaborator to be able to work on the repository, but I cannot delete the repository. So let me know what you can see when you scroll down to the bottom of this repository. All right, we still have two more persons. Okay, there's one last person I have not added. Mm, Okay, you already have access. All right, that's beautiful. So that's for adding, being able to manage people that are here. Only those with access to this repository can view it. Yes. All right, let's go back to our code. And let's go to the GitHub desktop again. That for those of us using GUI, we can. So we are the Lilian repository. Now, if you manage multiple repositories on GitHub desktop, for example, we are at Lilian, but this is repository. I want to switch to Code Vixens. This is repository here. So click on this part here to access it, and we are back to this repository. Now, I don't have VS. Okay, I have VS Code open. We're on a different project. So I want to open this in Visual Studio Code. All right, so we are back here. Let me expand this. Okay, this is interesting. Give me a moment. Ooh. Okay, I understand. All right, so we are back here. Let me make this bigger for us. So I don't know how exactly to go about this, but I want to demonstrate how we can work with this. So if you have access to the repository now, let me remove what I have here so that for those of who did not previously have access, we can now access it.
Seconds.
Sorry, so I want to remove this from here so that we have the process of adding it back from the beginning. And let's even close Visual Studio Code. So now that you have access to the repository, supposing you just got added to a private repository or you had access to a public repository and you want to now carry the code from here and have it on your computer locally, I mentioned that you would go to click on code, make sure you're on local, select HTTPS. By default, it should be here, but just in case you don't, make sure that you're on these tabs and then copy this. Okay, if you have GitHub desktop, you have this option here. So click to open with GitHub desktop, should already do that. Allow and open link. And this would clone it. Now, supposing we did not have that here, let's do this again. Supposing we did not click on this, if we click on this, it will open GitHub desktop, and all we basically have to do is just change this part if we don't want it to be cloned here and choose where we want it to be cloned. And then after that, we would clone it. So this folder only contains files. So let's switch to let's switch to a new and let me create a new folder here. So, and then I select this and then select and click on clone, and that should do it. Beautiful. So once again, let me remove this. And let's just use the link this time. So supposing we didn't use this, copy the link, come to GitHub desktop, click on clone a repository from the internet, URL, and then our link, and choose where we want to clone it to. Let's go back here. And let's just clone it inside this place. So select and clone. So now that this is done, we can click to open in Visual Studio Code. Now, I think I have used GitHub Desktop with, I think Atom or Sublime Text, and GitHub Desktop would automatically detect what code editor you are using on your laptop, and that is what will show up here instead. Last time I used that was what it does. I don't know if it's different now. Well, Visual Studio Code is the only code editor I have here, and I think that is why I'm seeing here. So if your editor is not here, you also have the choice to select your editor in preferences, and then you can basically select which editor you have on your laptop that you want to show here. On my laptop, it's just Visual Studio Code, and it's already detected, so don't worry about not having VS Code on your laptop. So, but we're using Visual Studio Code here, and when I click to open in Visual Studio Code, I am back to this. So I'm back to VS Code and I have the project open. So here I am currently logged in as Nehemiah, the account I created yesterday. And let's say this is you working and you make changes to the file here. So hi, so let's assume you made changes here. Now, this account here, Nehemiah at Code Vixens doesn't have access to this GitHub account, because if we go back to GitHub, this is my account I used to create this DevGenix and not Nehemiah at Code Vixens. So if I try to push to this repository from an account that doesn't have access, I would get an error. So let's actually try to do that. And because I am logged into GitHub to Visual Studio Code with this GitHub account, that is what source control here is going to be using. So when I make and then commit, and let me try and push this. Okay, so the push went. Okay, it was my account that did that. How do I switch this to my account? So sorry, Nehemiah at Code Vixens. Okay, I may have to log out from Git here entirely. How do I do this? How do I do this? Okay, I'm trying to basically demonstrate how you would push to GitHub, but if you have write access, this is how you would do it. So make changes to your file. When you're done, push from here or push from your GitHub desktop application. I think I demonstrated how to push from GitHub desktop yesterday, and that should do it. Now, if you don't have access to the repository, as I mentioned, and you try, for example, you're able to get the link to the repository somehow, and when you come to GitHub desktop and try to clone it, you will not be able to clone it in the very first place. So let me try and switch my account on GitHub desktop here. No. Also no. How do I do this again? No. All right. So let me sign out here. And let me sign out on GitHub also. And now let me sign in with an account that doesn't have access here. Continue with my browser. I did not store that password we used yesterday. Wow. No. Okay, give me a moment and let me I have to reset that password. Okay, that should do it. Interesting. Okay, I guess this is a internet network issue. I see. All right, we're back. Sorry. First, let me see. Okay, that's Are you serious now? Why is everything conspiring against me this evening? I don't want to set a password I cannot remember because that's what happened yesterday. Beautiful, beautiful. All right. Right. We are back. So let's go into GitHub desktop and continue with browser. and then would want to authorize. All right. Okay, let me restart GitHub desktop. So currently we don't have any repository for Nehemiah at codefixins.com. And even though we are able to give me a moment here. All right, so if we visit our GitHub profile, yeah, we'll see that we don't have that, we can't see that repository here. So first, I have to grant access to this username the way I granted access to your username, your GitHub account, so that you could access that profile. And to do that, I have to sign in here and then quickly do that. It's quite a process. Mm. Okay. Let me verify this. All right, so let's go back to our repository. Let's try to do one thing first. So I have access to this repository and I can get the code to clone it. So I'm going to try to first clone it with an account that doesn't have access to this. So remember, in GitHub desktop, I am signed in as Nehemiah at CodeVixens, and I have not yet been granted access to this repository. But let's say I obtained the repository link from somewhere, and I try to clone this repository. So let's go ahead and let's try to clone. So here we have this error that one couldn't find a repository, check that your login network is inaccessible, or basically this. And this is because we don't have access to that repository. So now let's grant my other account access to this repository in the way I granted you access to it. So we'll go to collaborators and add people. And that's me. And then add. So now I should have access. And if I go back to my other GitHub account, oh, I have not yet accepted the invite. So let me go to GitHub. And this is the view invitation. So I have 7 days to do this. So here I accept the invitation. And now I have push access to this repository. So I can clone this repository by getting this URL. When I'm done working, I can push back to this repository. Now, yes, I actually to check if we can access settings, but because I'm only a collaborator here and I'm not the owner of the repository, I don't have access to settings. I can only just manage actions inside this place and see general information about the repository here. So now when I try to clone it here again, this should work. And yes, it worked. So if I come to my GitHub account and I refresh this, I should be able to see that repository here. So I have access to this repository, and this is the one I can access. So that does it. And here I have access, and when I click to open the Visual Studio Code, I am now here, and then I can now do my work. So let's do work here. Hi, I am Nehemiah, and I am Code Vixens on GitHub. Let me delete this part and instead create something that links to my GitHub account. So here, make sure I focus. So wait a moment. So hi, this is my GitHub profile. So I created a link that when you click on hi, this is my GitHub profile, it will take you to my GitHub profile. And now I want to push this code. Now, because I am signed in, I am still globally on my laptop, I'm signed in at DevGenix. So if I make the push from VS Code to go at DevGenix, but I want to make the push from Nehemiah at CodeVixen, and I am signed in there on GitHub desktop. Now, here we can see the changes we've made. We deleted this part of the code and we added this new part of the code. So I want to demonstrate what I did. So I added my GitHub link, and that should do it. And then commit to main, and that has created the commit. And now I would want to push this. Now you must not push after you make every single commit. You can make as many commits as you want to do, and when you are ready, you then push over to GitHub. So push origin. And that is it. And when I go to the repository here and I refresh, and also let me check the other account and also refresh there. So how did I still make this commit at DevGenix? Let's see. All right, let me try to make another commit this time. And I think this has reflected my account. And instead, let me just delete this. This should not take a while. All right. So if I don't provide the commit message, GitHub would use this description you are seeing inside here. So I'm just going to go ahead with that. I just want to make sure I am pushing with Nehemiah to code victims. Ah. All right, let's check again. All right, now it finally worked. So here I just made my commit. My first commit update index.html. And if I go to my other account, me that owns this repository here, and I refresh this, yes, I can now see that this should come up. This was the person that made this commit. If I inspect all commits here, I would see commit that I made, which is me here, and I'll also see commits that this guy here made. So now let's quickly also talk about how to work with other people, two of us working on this file at the exact same time, or we both work on the file, the same branch, and we are making changes, and how we should basically work when you're doing something like that. So let's come back to GitHub and let's make changes. So remember that line there was deleted. Let's say I want to change this guy here. Welcome to Code Vixens. And I made changes to this place where you Git and GitHub. So I've made changes here, and I would push from my DevGenix account, which is what is on VS Code here. So here, now when you're creating commit message, I think I mentioned this yesterday, as part of like best practices or standard practices you should do, healthy practices basically. Let your commit message be as descriptive and short as possible. So if I'm typing it here, I am only limited to the first 50 characters that would show. If I go beyond 50 characters, I will get an error here that I am typing too much. Let's do that. So I changed the header to show that and I am 33 characters over 50. So 50 is the recommended, you keep it at, and it should be as descriptive as possible. So rather than write the fact that I changed the header to show that I am learning Git and GitHub, that is really not necessary. Simple updated header should do it. And then inside this place is the only one I can provide. But if I'm using the GitHub desktop app, remember that you can always keep it concise here and give much more descriptions in this place. So, but let's just go ahead with code updated header, and I would commit, and then I would push to GitHub. And this should push as DevGenix account. So let me refresh the commit here. Oh, so I was one who made this change. All right, so let's assume somebody else somewhere, DevGenix, now wants to work on that same file, and he also wants to work on this header, which I just did. Now, what I'm trying to create here is something called a merge conflict. So because this person already worked on this file, and I am not aware that this person already worked on the file, and I have changes I want to also make to this file. Let's say at the current state of the code where I met it, it was where it was before, which was here. So welcome to Code Vixens, and this was how it was. So when I look at this and I decide that I want to modify this in my own way, so here I write it's to Git and GitHub, and that's where I'm learning it. I'm going to try to use terminal so that I am. Let me check. But give me a moment. I want to check who I'm currently making the comment at. Okay. There's something here. All right. So currently I am logged in as Nehemiah at CodeGenix. What I'm trying to do, however, is to make a push to this repository using DevGenix account. I can't do that from here now because everywhere on my laptop I am currently logged in as Nehemiah as CodeGenix. So I'm going to try to do this on GitHub itself. And which brings me to also mention that you can also make changes to your code directly on GitHub. And let me demonstrate how you would do that. Where's this private tab? Right. So I'm logged in at DevGenix here. This is the file I want to make changes to. So I would click on it. And if I want to edit this, I would come back here and click on this. And then replace this with what I want to keep it at. So here, and then I would and let's say I create this in a new branch. Those changes. I'll explain that soon. So the change did not quite go exactly how I wanted it. So when you're collaborating with other developers, there are a number of ways you can work on that. Now, if all of you agree that you want to work on the main branch at the same time, then that is fine. But in some case, in most cases, it's not ideal. By the main branch, I mean when I go to code, this is the branch I'm on. When we created this repository, the branch that was created was called main, and that was the only branch there. Now, if I want to work with you, once I have access to this repository, I would clone the repository as I did here. And because the main branch is the only branch that is here, by default, when I make changes and I push back to GitHub, it's push over to the main branch. But in most cases, the main branch is like the one single source of truth that should only be modified from time to time. And before code gets to the main branch, it should be tested. It should be sure that this is what we want to use there. So how people would usually work here is because it's a private repository, it means that you have direct access to the repository. So it is not a public repository that you don't have access to. But what you can now do is you can decide to create branches, your own branch. So I can click here and I can view all branches here, and I can create a new branch for myself and work just on that branch. So I would let me name this DevGenix. So let me name this a DevGenix branch and create a branch here. And on GitHub desktop, let's try to fetch origin so that Git desktop is aware of the new change we made to our branch. So fetch origin, and that does it. There should be an option, good. So if we click on current branch here, we can see the number of branches that we have. And when we make changes, like this change we made here, and I want to push this to GitHub, I can select which branch I want to push to GitHub from, and I can click on DevGenix and bring my changes to my original branch. I have work that is open here. Remember, we made changes to this file. That is why we have this here. And if I inspect this, this is the change that we made. Now, because I made this change on my main branch, GitHub is asking me if I want to leave the changes on that main branch. Now, if I leave the changes there, GitHub would kind of just remember where exactly I left off there. So if I come back to that main branch at any time, I would see this code there. So let's try the two options. So now let me leave the changes on my main branch and switch branches. And let me modify what I have here so that we can show that. Let's add, okay, I don't have too much time to type. Let me just duplicate this instead. So we added two more headers. And if we come here, I'm on DevGenix branch. When I'm done, as I said, if I don't provide the message, GitHub would use the message here. So let me just leave it as GitHub message and commit to DevGenix and push to origin. It will push to this branch that is currently selected at the top here, and then push to origin. So that should push it to that specific branch. Now let's switch over to my main branch. And when we come back, this was where we left off. I am guessing. Was it here or I am learning Git and GitHub? That was okay. So sorry, this is it. So what Git did was, remember what we wrote was, it is where I am learning Git and GitHub, and we did not commit that change there. So it means Git did not register it as a timestamp as a message, but it was aware that we made a change there. And when we switched without committing that change, it stashed the changes. So it's like I just held the changes and kept it in place for you to when you come back. So when I switch back to my main branch here, I can see when you come back here, you will see stash changes. So every change I've made here in any file that I did not commit before leaving this branch would still be here. And I can choose to either discard it or restore it. If I click on restore, I have the code back here. It is where I'm learning Git and GitHub. So I guess this like gives you an idea as to like how powerful basically and how like very important it is to have to use Git and GitHub when you are working. So now that I have made these changes here, I can decide to push or not push, or maybe switch branches again and switch over to this one. And I can bring my changes to this new branch. When I do that, every change I have made on that main branch will be copied over to this new branch. And Git will leave the main branch at the last commit message it was. So let's switch back. Let's switch to a new branch here. And this is it. Now, if we switch branches back to main, we don't see that stash changes here. And if we come here, this was the last place where we left it at. This was the last commit message. If we hover over here, this was the last commit message that on this main branch. So Git just copied those changes into the new branch. If we go over to the branch we switched to here, we can see the changes that Git brought over. It is where I am learning Git and GitHub, and that we've already commented this message. There are a lot more ways you can do that. So now, talking about working in branches, we created two branches, DevGenix and we made a push there. So if you are using branches to work, to collaborate, like whenever I make changes, I make them inside my own file. I want to bring them over to the main branch. And the way we can do that is by using something called pull request. So click on pull request here. Um, okay, we automatically created this, modify the code inside this place. And I selected I want to put a new. Let me merge this and now explain the purpose of creating a new pull request when you want to. That is done. So remember, after we pushed to GitHub on the DevGenix branch, what we now have after we push to origin, the option we now have here is to create a pull request or preview a pull request. And what this would help us do is GitHub Desktop would help us create a pull request. And what a pull request means is that I have made changes in a different branch somewhere else, and I want to take that change and put it inside another branch. So in this case, if we create and click new pull request, we have the base branch, which is the branch that you want to merge into. And then you have the compare, which is the branch that you are getting changes from and putting into the base branch. So here we are on main and main. There's no change. The two main branches are at the same state. But if you click on DevGenix, we see that we made changes here. We added two new header code that the main branch doesn't have. So this is the difference between the main branch and DevGenix branch. And this is like a visual visual of the commits that have been different between the both of the branches. And these are the number of files that we have made that were changed. Sorry, these were the additions and these were the deletions. Now, next thing we want to do is create a pull request. And the same way as if you want to create a commit message, you should make sure that your commit message is descriptive as possible. It should be the same thing when you are creating pull request. So what did I do inside this pull request? What exactly does this pull request do? A summary of it is what you should go into the title here. We have much more descriptive things that you want to explain as to how you did or what is working, what is currently not working in this new pull request. You can give that inside here. So for example, updates index of HTML is very fine. I can say I updated website page, for example. And what exactly did I do here? In this pull request, added two new headers, and that does it. Now, writing here is done. You can do something called writing with Markdown, which is what we have here. Styling with Markdown is supported. Markdown is like allows you to do a lot of things. I can put images, I can add links, I can put videos inside this place. So we'll do one very common one. Let's create a list. So added two new headers. Let me list the headers that I created. To create a list, use a hyphen space header 1, and GitHub would automatically do that, or you can add it yourself, and header 2. Next, let me just add a checkbox that indicates that I have done this. So hyphen space square bracket open space square bracket close, and then space, type what you want to type. So added two headers. Now you can click on preview to see how exactly this change, what you've written here looks like. So this is what it looks like, list, and this is a checkbox. Now, if you want to write a checkbox that is checked already, replace this space with an X and preview, and this would be checked. So this check means that I've done this thing. But let's say I needed to do something else inside this place. So there was another feature maybe have not yet been done. Let's say add link to my GitHub again. So I have not yet done this. I'm going to leave it unchecked, and then I'll create a pull request. So here I have done this and I have done this. So for example, they asked me to add 2 headers and to add a link to my GitHub. But so far I've only added 2 headers. So I only pushed the commit to add 2 headers. And now I'm still left with add a link to my GitHub. And that's why I left it unchecked. Now, as long as I am on the DevGenix branch and I am merging into the main branch, I can go back to DevGenix branch, make changes, sorry. And when I push to that branch, the commits I did would show up here. So that's what it means by add more commits by pushing to the DevGenix branch on this repository code devgenix/code vixen. So let's do that. So what we want to do now is add a link to my GitHub profile. Let me copy a link to my GitHub profile here. And let's go back to, okay, if I push from here, it's going to push as the other guy. So let me try to do this directly inside this branch on GitHub. So again, I would go to index.html and I'll make sure that I am on the DevGenix branch. So if I go to code, select that this is the branch that I want to make changes on, and that should affect it. And then let's modify the code. So let me add a link here to So depending on what file you are editing, you can preview the changes also. But I'm just going to see the changes I have made here. And this is what I just added. So let's update. And then commit directly to the DevGenix branch, which I'm on, and commit change. Now, when I go back to that pull request, okay, so let me mention something. So far, we have 2 contributors on this file because 2 people so far have worked on this particular file. And that's me and that's this other account. So let's go back to pull request. So remember we created 2 tags and that was 2 checkboxes. That's add headers and add link to GitHub. So far we've only done 1 and that's what we can see here. And click on update website page. And when we scroll up, we'll see this new commit that was pushed by somebody else, not the original person who made the first commit. And that was by me. And now I can come here and check that I have added the link to my GitHub, and that's done. So because I am the one who owns this repository, that's the only reason why somebody saying something. You said? Okay, I guess we should go ahead. So because I am the owner of this repository, that's the reason why I can see merge pull request here. Let me be sure that this other guy cannot see it. So for example, if you're only a collaborator, I don't think you'll be able to merge pull request unless if you are given that permission. Okay, so you're a collaborator, you have write and push access, so you can also push on this. You can also merge the pull request. So now we've completed what the work we had to do, added headers and then added a link to GitHub. And we want to carry that change from DevGenix branch and put into the main branch. And the way we can do that is now by merging this pull request. So if you go to GitHub desktop, yeah, we've already created a pull request, so we don't have that showing up here again. So click on merge pull request. You can update creating a pull request, merging a pull request to create a commit on its own. And the commit is created because we are bringing 2 commits from another branch into the main branch, into this new branch that we are putting the commits inside. So I can leave it as a default here to let me know that this commit was because I merged a pull request from this branch. So confirm merge. And that is done. Now when we go to code, and on the main branch, we can see that the latest commit on this main branch was this person merged the pull request from this branch here. And these were the this was the last one we did, added a link to my GitHub that was done by DevGenix. And this was the pull commit that was triggered when I merged the pull request. However, if I go to the DevGenix branch, I would not see that merge pull request because it was only done on the main branch, sorry. So switch over to DevGenix. And yes, last thing we can see is added link to my GitHub. So now we've demonstrated how you can work on a different branch and push your changes to your own branch. And you or somebody else who is working on a repository can take your changes and merge into the main branch using pull request. Also, a much more better way is first to create an issue. So I want to work on something, but what exactly do I want to work on? What exactly do I want to work on? And I cannot just, I can just go into the code and do stuff that I want to do. The recommended way is that first I create an issue for this thing I want to work on. So I'll come here to issues, create a new issue. Now this issue can be created by me, who is working on it, or by the person who wants me to work on it. So here, let me create it from this account. And let's say, what should I do here? What should I do here? Let me look at the food currently. Okay, let me say I want to change the background color to blue, so it would affect the CSS file. It's currently black. So okay, let me create this from the other account. Issues. Create new issue. Change. Blue. And I don't have any further description here. If I have one, I can provide it here. Submit new issue. Now, I want somebody to work on this. I would find the person who is collaborating, who also collaborates with me on this repository. Now I can see a list of us who is working here. So I can, for example, assign this issue to you to work on it. Well, in this case, let me assign it to my other account. And that is it. I've assigned this person. Now, so on here, I want to work on that issue. I've seen that issue. Let me go back to the account. Now, as I said, there are ways to do this. On this place, if I want to work on it, I can see that I am on the DevGenix branch currently. So in Visual Studio Code, let me create a new branch for me to work on my changes. And let me name it, let me give it my name.
Very, very fast. Go to Monkey House.
Let me create a new branch here, and I'm creating it from the current states of the main branch. So click on main, I'll give it my name and enter. And that would create a new branch from GitHub with my name, Nehemiah. Now let me work on it. So let me switch this to blue. And that should do it. Now I have finished working here. As again, we have the option of staging the change here and also just doing it on GitHub desktop. Let me stage the changes here. And let me go back to GitHub desktop. This is the change we've made so far. Then changed to blue. And GitHub already knows what branch exactly I am working on, Nehemiah branch. And then I would commit to Nehemiah. And I'll first publish this branch because this branch is not currently on GitHub. It is only on my laptop. And that's why I see the current branch hasn't been published to the remote yet. So publish, and this would take the commit plus the fact that I created a new branch and send it over to GitHub. Now, remember that it was an issue. So it is currently on Nehemiah branch, but it is not, it is not on the main branch here. So the main branch doesn't have that code here. This was the last commit where I made changes to Nehemiah branch. So on GitHub, I can compare and pull requests. And the base branch is main, and I want to merge int from Nehemiah branch. And this is already like a little commit message. Or I can use the GitHub desktop to create a pull request. So let's preview pull request first. Merge one commit into main branch, as we can see there from Nehemiah branch. And let's create a pull request. And this will bring you back here. And then this was what I did. So let's say inside here, I want to mention that this branch, this pull request is to fix the issue that was created. So this pull request fixes the reference issues or pull request inside a repository type hash. And so far, this was the issue that was created before. Change background to blue to 6.3. Let's say I want to add that same stuff I added before, and I have done this time. Website background is blue. I can also preview this and then create a pull request. So I finished working on this, and I want to request the person who owns the repository or somebody else to look at my changes and then review the changes I have made. Now I have DevGenix here. Also, I can select from any person, also anyone else, but I want to request me. So now I would get a request that I requested a review from DevGenix. And if I switch to my DevGenix account and go to pull request, see this, I will see that I was requested to review this code. And I can click on add review. And I can see the changes that you've made, background color blue, and approve this change. Or if I want to give feedback that, okay, don't just use blue, use a different shade of blue, for example. I can do that here by leaving you a comment. So on this place, for example, let's say use a different shade of blue. And this could be a single comment. So it means I don't have any objection against, it doesn't impact the pull request or the issue we've worked on. It's just a comment basically. Or I can start a review. Now, if I start a review, it means that you have to work on this issue before this pull request can be merged. So let me keep it as start a review. And let me just leave a different comment here entirely that says, next time, keep this as, make this H2 instead. And just keep it as a review comment. So that is it. When I'm done, I would come here and I would submit my 2 reviews to pending comments. So I reviewed these changes and I left this comment for you. And if I come back here and refresh it on me who made the changes, I can see that I have already reviewed this. And I asked you to use a different shade of blue here. And I said maybe next time you should make this H2. So let's go to VS Code now that I have been given changes to review in this place. Go here and let me change it to a different shade of blue. Let me keep it here. So we had two things. One, we're asked to change it to a different shade of blue. And here we said we should keep it at H2. So here, let's change this to H2 and change this to H2. We've made changes in two files. Let's just use here because we're already in VS Code. So you can just use this to manage everything. So we only want to commit, since we made two changes in different files, we cannot use one commit to just summarize everything. I mean, you can, but it's not recommended. So let your changes be descriptive. If it's two files that does one thing, that addresses one thing, then I'll just commit those two files. But here, I made changes in this CSS file and the index of HTML file. So first, I'm going to stage only this one. So the commits I'm going to make here would only affect this file. And here, now, it is not advised that you make your commits very personal like this, like I changed it to. So instead, this could be changed. To a shade of blue, and then commit. And I only committed my CSS file, but I still have my HTML file pending, sorry. And now I can either stage this or just write the commit message. I need to commit everything here. But let me stage this and then changed header to H2. And this would commit. I'm still on Nehemiah branch here, and I'll push. So pull request, and I refresh here. All right, so I'm back. Sorry, somebody said you can't see my screen. Oh God, that was an hour ago. I hope you're able to see it now because I didn't see your message on time. I apologize for that. So when I come back here and scroll up, I would see the changes I have made. Change background color to shade of blue, change header to H2. And now I can come here and let this person know that I have done that. So I have done this. Comment here. I've also done this. Comment. Now, depending on what permissions you have, here I am a collaborator, so I have the right to I can resolve the conversation. It means that we are done with this conversation, but it depends on where you are, what permissions you have in what repository you are in. If a repository owned by an organization, they can limit what access you have. So, for example, I can create comment, but I don't have the permission to mark it as resolved because I'm not the one reviewing this pull request. So let's assume that here I can see that you've made that change. Give this a moment. So this is done. I can say, all right, this is nice, good work. And here, good work. And then I would resolve this conversation and mark this one also as resolved. And that does it. All right, so finally we have image conflict I've been looking for. So here we have merge conflicts that must be resolved on the index.html file. And this can be done when, how would I explain this? Two people worked on the same file or modified the same lines or similar lines in the same file. That's when you have a merge conflict. Basically, you worked on this thing, somebody else worked on it also, maybe in different places or in very similar places. You might get a merge conflict, and we just have one. So for context, we changed this from H1 to H2 on the exact same line. And if I look at resolve merge conflict, let's just see what was changed. This is what we see. It was at H1 before on Nehemiah branch. And when I made changes also, I changed it from there to H2. Now, if I come here and I inspect what changes was here, let me look at the weapon.
Hi, Nehemiah. Good evening.
Hi.
Hi, this is
Good evening.
Lois. So I'll be stopping the recording now. I have a low battery, so I'll be stopping now. But the class can still go on. But the recording will just stop here because I have a low battery and can't continue recording this call.
I have a low battery too. I'm at 11%, so I should wrap this up very soon. Like very soon.
Yeah, okay. Mine is at 6%, so it's almost dead there. So
Okay.
yeah, and I may not be available to end the session, so you can also end it as well.
Okay, let me try to wrap up now. We're already kind of done for today. Thank you.
All right, okay then. Thank you. Sir.
Okay, so this is the merge conflict that we have, and on the main branch, which is branch that we want to merge into, the code is at H1, and on this branch, which is Nehemiah branch, we are merging into main from Nehemiah, but on the main branch, we have that at H1. So I can come here and let's switch back to Nehemiah branch. Sorry, main branch. On the main branch, this is what I have: H1, 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 everything basically. But on Nehemiah branch, switch back to Nehemiah is now H2, and I just have this code here. So we made changes to this file, and that is what's giving us merge conflict, because what is on the default branch, which is the main branch, is not the same as the change that we are making. And we made change to one line that affects the two branches at the same time. So let's look at ways we can resolve this. Now, using the web editor is fine. It's